Hi, it's Rob B here with Rob D, and it's the Property Podcast. Now, this week's episode's a bit different because I jumped on the phone, but not with Rob. I got on the line with two listeners who are property investors who needed some help. And in this week's episode, you're going to hear me mentor them live.
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning, property investors come together to be informed and inspired. Thank you for joining us for what's going to be a great episode, because you're going to hear the process that Rob goes through when helping someone with their goals. Yes, he's solving problems and bringing clarity to the people he got on the phone with, but there'll be so much you can learn from the approach that he takes that you can apply it to your own situation. So make sure you stick around all the way to the end, because you'll hear about another great way that you can get help with your own situation for free.
So Rob, this week's news story has a catchy headline, and it's landlords selling up have made an average gain of £80,000 in 2018. So there's data been released from Hamptons International, and through their research, that landlords made a profit of nearly £80,000 before tax last year. Now that's a nice number, but the point of this news story we're bringing you isn't to tell you that landlords are making money. No, it's actually really interesting that in that data and in that report that there are landlords not making money, because this is an average figure. And the news story went on to say that 85% of landlords made a gain, with the remaining 15% making a loss, which, Rob, I found staggering that 15% made a loss. Okay, you can accept that 1 to maybe 5% for people who are just in desperate circumstances, but 15%, that says to me that people have panicked and made a conscious decision just to get out of the game at a loss, which goes against everything we talk about. I'm quite disappointed.
Yeah, it really is astonishing. Like you say, there are always some people who have unexpected events and they need to sell quickly. Fine. There'll be some people who are highly leveraged and their tax changes are going to really affect them, so they need to get out. Fine. But that's not going to get close to 15% of sellers. So I agree, because of all the stuff that you hear, all the bad news around, everything in the headlines, I think people are panicking and making bad choices. Now, the other lesson I think embedded in here is about where to invest, because it says here that the average landlord selling up has owned their property for 9.6 years on average. Okay, so you hold a property for 10 years. Conventional wisdom is property doubles every 10 years. How are people ending up selling at a loss? Well, there are massive regional variations. In London and the Southeast, where, as we know, up until the last couple of years, it had a fantastic run, 96% of people selling made a profit. In the Northeast, only 56% sold at a profit. So nearly half of the people selling in the Northeast after holding a property for 10 years have made a loss. Of course, that doesn't mean that the Northeast is a bad place to invest and the Southeast is a good place to invest. Far from it. But it's about getting in and getting out at the right time and investing wherever makes sense in the property cycle right now. So this story is fascinating because the data shows two things so clearly. Firstly, you're not guaranteed to win in property. You need to buy it in the right place at the right time and do it smartly. And the second lesson, don't be a forced seller. Don't be in a position where you have to sell at a particular time and you can wait for the right moment. And definitely don't get spooked by what you hear and end up cementing a loss when you really don't have to.
On this week's podcast, we're tackling a topic that we've wanted to do for a while, which is mentoring, which is helping people out with their strategy. Because so many people seem confused when it comes to property and getting started in particular. Or you might be that person who started but doesn't really know where to go next because you've done a couple, great, you've taken action, we constantly bang on about that, that's awesome, but you don't know where this is taking you, how it's going to get you to your goals. You may not even be that clear on your goals. Don't worry, that is common, so common, and that's why we've done this episode, because there are so many people right now, and one of them is probably you, that just don't know the next steps to take because they haven't got a plan. They haven't got that strategy. And on this week's episode, you're going to hear me talk to two investors about their portfolios, and I will guide them through the process of making better decisions. Now, Rob, the process of getting clear with your goals and building a strategy from those goals is so important.
It's ridiculously important. It's why we spend as much time talking about goals and strategy as we do about the nuts and bolts of investing, because it is just as important. All the knowledge you've got about how to let a property or how to refurb a house, it counts for nothing if you don't have the right strategy behind it. That's why we talk about it so much. But it is really hard to get clear. You hear so many conflicting things, and it's always very difficult to look at your own situation dispassionately as well. But I think this episode will really help. So as we get into this, of course, listen to the stories and listen to the specific advice that Rob gives, but listen out for his thought process as well and the reason why he's taking things in a certain direction, because those are the principles that you can take away and use when you're working on your own strategy. Okay, first up, we've got Ruth in Dorset. Ruth and her husband Dennis have started investing in South Wales, and they've already got a couple of properties on the go.
So, your first property, what was it and how much did you pay for it?
Okay, so it was a 2-bedroom. It was a repossession. The estate agent, it was one of those classics. They put one picture on Rightmove, which is always a good sign. Inside, it was lovely. It had a lot of potential. We made an offer of 41,000, and they said, if you can complete in a month, you've got it. So we talked to our solicitor and that wasn't a problem.
Perfect. Okay. So you've turned that around pretty quickly because you only bought that a few months ago.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the plan with that property? What, you're going to get it remortgaged next?
The next thing is we want to get a tenant in there first so that we present a strong case to a mortgage broker.
And what do you think you'd be able to let it out for?
I'm hoping it's going to be £400 a month, but worst case is 375.
And what do you think it's worth now if you play it safe?
Playing safe, I would say 60.
Okay, so if you refinance that at 75%, you'll be at 45. So yes. You purchased for 41. How much have you spent on it?
We have spent just under 10 on it.
So you'll be leaving about 6k in that
yes,
property?
Yeah.
Okay. You haven't been deterred by the delays and doing just one property because you've got a second. Tell me about that property.
That's in Wales again. It's the first one is in Bridgend, a little town, one, quite a big town called Maesteg. The second one is in a town called Ferndale in the Rhondda. And it's a 3-bedroom. Again, it needs everything doing to it. So again, we'll hope to have that ready by about August time, I would think.
And how much are you going to spend on it?
The budget there, top end of 10,000. It will hopefully come in well below that.
Great. And you purchased that for 37k?
37, yeah.
When you've spent all your costs, you're in for 47?
Thereabouts, yeah.
Okay. So you've spent 47. What do you think, playing it safe again, it'll be worth by the time you're finished?
I would say on that one, 60.
So they're both worth about the same. Rent, similar?
Yeah, 375 to 400. Yeah.
Okay, great. So Ruth, it's great. We know where you are now. Why are you doing this? Where do you want to get to? What's the goal?
Our goal, running alongside this, is we have an interest-only mortgage on our house. We love living here. All right, it might be just 2 of us now, plus the holiday let, but we love our house. So what we want to do is just before it expires in February 2023. So the goal is to have £3,000 net income from buy-to-let by December 2022 so that we can service a new mortgage.
You mentioned a holiday let there. What does that bring in each month?
5 to 6, I would say.
Okay, so if we average it out at 500 a month, is that profit or revenue?
That would be revenue.
Okay, well, let's say that's £300 a month profit. Okay.
Yes.
So that's 10% of your goal before you start. Okay, so your holiday let, if your goal is £3,000 per month, 10% of it is covered by your holiday let. You currently will be getting around 375 on each of those buy-to-lets that you've mentioned. So if we take away the mortgage, now I've just done it on a conservative rate. I've not done the best rates out there. I've not done the worst rates. I've just done an average rate. If we work that out, I think your mortgage should be around about £115 per month. So if it's let all the time, you'd be making £260 a month. Now, it's not going to be let all the time, but we can just work to those numbers.
Yeah.
Now, 260, if we round it to make it easier, it means that it's £500 for those two buy-to-lets after mortgage costs.
Okay, so lots of numbers flying around there. Let's have a quick recap of where Ruth is now. So they've got a 2-bed house where they've spent about 51,000, going to get that refinanced for 60,000, leaving about 5 in. They've also got a 3-bedroom house where they'll have spent about 47, again, refinance it for 60. So they're going to get out of that one only leaving a couple of £1,000 in, which is brilliant. Each of those is going to make around about £250 a month in profit. And they've already got roughly £300 in profit coming in from a holiday let. So add it all together and that's £800 towards the goal of £3,000. So about a quarter of the way there. So that's brilliant, but there's still quite a way to go. So what should they do next?
Let's say you can repeat the model that you're doing currently and you've got another 3 years to hit your goal. So let's play it really safe and say you can repeat this every year for 3 years leading up to your goal. Then that would mean that you could add £500 profit over each year, which would be £1,500. So that means if you just carried on as you were, you'd have your 800 that you have and another 1,500, which means that you'd be 2,300 towards your goal or your target of 3,000 by the time you want to do it. So you're not miles away.
That's pretty good. I think we'd be happy with that. I mean, the goal is really aspirational and it's good to have a challenging goal, but 2-3 would be quite pleased with ourselves if we did that.
So it's great that it's achievable, 2,300, and that will get you there. You know how to do it. You've got the experience. That's absolutely awesome.
So that's really good news. Without going too crazy, Rob's managed to get Ruth up to £2,300 a month. And this really shows the benefit of planning and from working back from a very clear goal. Because sometimes when you do that exercise, it becomes clear that you need to make some big changes or put your foot on the gas or approach things in a completely different way. But sometimes you just learn that actually you're doing the right thing and all you need to do is keep going. And that's really valuable as well. So that should give Ruth comfort that she's on a path that's going to get her to round about where she wants to be. And that's fantastic. But there are always multiple ways to the same goal. And it sounds like Ruth has got some other options as well.
What I wanted to ask you about was you've touched on your HMO experience. Why for now have you ruled that out? Is it funds or is it something else?
It's funds because if we were going to do it sensibly, we'd be doing it here so that I could oversee the management. I don't say I want to manage it forever, but I would want to set it up because I do think I've got a lot of very useful experience.
I think what you can do here is use your experience in a different way. You can't manage it from where you are because you're too far away. But what you do know is what a great job looks like. And you can interview different letting agents who can manage that property for you and get confidence that there is at least one and hopefully more than one provider in an area that you're targeting that can live up to your expectations and deliver the service you want and expect. Because a lot of people don't have your experience, so they don't know the questions to ask. They don't know what to look for. And that's something that you can really use to your advantage. So by going to these areas that you're interested in HMO and using your skills in a different way, you can do this up front before you commit, and you absolutely should do it up front before you commit. But that will answer your question for you. Can I get it managed the way I want? At the moment, you assume not. And that might be true, but you don't know until you go out and do it. And that bit of research, that bit of time spent could bring in another strategy that you're currently ruling out.
That's a really good point, and I hadn't looked at it like that, and I would love to do HMOs.
Because I wouldn't jump straight to HMO now. If you find this model works when you refinance, do another couple, get another 500, because then you are getting even closer to the number you want. So suddenly we're getting closer to a comfort level. Would 1,800 be enough to be like the bare minimum if you did another two? I know the goal is 3,000, but would 1,800 get you to a sort of, okay, I'm at the bare minimum point?
It would be extremely encouraging if we got to 1,800, yes.
So based on your numbers so far, you should get there with another year's worth of work. After that point, you've got that comfort then that you've lacked previously, where that financial comfort of that income coming in. That means then you've got the space to investigate this and take it on as an investment. You can afford to take that little extra risk at that point. You don't have to go wild, but that taking on that extra risk once you've got that baseline income puts you in a much stronger position. So I don't think it's dump what you're doing and start the other. I think it's do a bit more. In the meantime, investigate this option. So while you're doing these other two, you can go, yes, this is going to work, or no, it isn't, for when that time comes around.
That's really good advice. I really hadn't thought of it like that, and I will do what you suggest. I think that's great. That's great advice, and it gives me some confidence that we're not absolutely mad and we haven't done the most dangerous thing and risked everything by putting it on credit cards.
So that's a nice extra option for Ruth there. She's got a clear path to her 2,300, but by using her skills with HMOs, she can get there faster or she can take it further. And what I really like about what Rob's said to Ruth there is not saying, right, stop what you're doing, go and do this instead. She's layering that on once she's at a point that she's comfortable with. And it's so much easier psychologically to do things like that, to do something that you perceive as a bit more risky or a bit more challenging once you've got a bit of a comfort level because you've built your base. So good luck to you, Ruth. We can't wait to hear how you get on. The next investor Rob's been speaking to is Christian. Christian's already in a nice position with his portfolio, but he's got a goal to increase his cash flow so he can continue to invest to ultimately build a pension pot and then something to hand down to his kids. Let's have a look at where he's at now.
So let's run through that portfolio then. So you've got a standard buy-to-let in London, which is bringing you £16,000 profit per annum. Tell me the backstory of that property. It's making a really nice return for you.
Yeah, so it was originally owned by my father. I used to give him my wages and he sort of paid it off for me. That sort of led me to try and get it remortgaged, which was really difficult. All the brokers were saying no because it's non-standard construction. But eventually I've managed to find a lender, which then enabled my further purchases for the 2 HMO properties.
And then why that shift in strategy? So you've got your standard buy-to-let. What attracted you to HMOs?
I felt at the time that I was working, possibly not enjoying my job all that much at that point in time. So I thought I was just looking at yield. And when I first started really investigating further buy-to-lets, once I learned about HMOs and how much money they can create, that sort of attracted me. And I guess at that point, I thought now's the time to get something which returns good cash flow so that I can hopefully build up that cash to purchase another buy-to-let property. Or if I decide to leave my job, then potentially it could support me and the family.
How did you pick your first HMO?
I just looked at them locally in Northampton and eventually one cropped up and it seemed about the right money. Just sort of went for it really.
Time-wise, are you able to comfortably manage both of those HMOs?
I am. I'm doing it at the moment. However, I wouldn't like to see me doing it long term just because of how much time it does take up.
So moving forward, how much have you got in the way of funds to go to the next investment?
I'd say I've got around 50,000 at the moment, and I've kind of got my eyes peeled all the time, just looking for what's out there, but just worried about which way everything's going to go with Brexit and so on.
Currently, what are you thinking about doing with that 50,000?
Listening to the podcast recently, I'm very much interested in a northern flat, perhaps, with a service charge, more of a hands-off sort of investment, something where perhaps I didn't need to visit the property so often.
Yeah, I understand why that may be the case, particularly if you found it a little bit hard work with the HMOs, managing those with what you've got going on in normal life. As something to compare to, how much time does the London property take up?
Really minimal. I mean, I've got a good tenant in there since 2015 and he's a really good guy. I barely have to visit the place. It's just no problems whatsoever.
Okay, so Christian's already tried 2 very different approaches. He's got his flat, which is very easy and predictable and doesn't take up much of his time. Then he's also got his 2 HMOs, which are far more time intensive, but of course also produce a higher income. He's now trying to work out what's next? And one of the options he's looking at is flats up north. So taking all of this into account, what advice does Rob have?
Great thing is, Christian, you may know this already, but you're in a really, really good position. You've got 46,000 coming in income-wise already, and you need to get to 48 in today's money to be able to retire, which is a position that a lot of people listening to the podcast will be envious of. The power that gives you is the power not having to take risk now. And you can make very cautious decisions with your next investment and still achieve what you want to achieve. So I think the HMO route has absolutely served you and it's got you to where you are today. And for the next few years, it'll continue to serve you by bringing in that additional income. But I think now, if you're at this fortunate crossroads, I think what you've got in mind is actually a really solid strategy that's starting to invest in really solid standard buy-to-lets that return-wise will give you a return, absolutely. And because of the mortgage stress tests that are in place now, you will get that if you're leveraging, which by the sounds of it, you absolutely will. So you will get a return. It's not going to be anywhere near to what you've experienced before. But what you can do is every couple of years is look to take £60,000 and buy a few buy-to-lets in real prime areas. I wouldn't be taking risk if I was you and trying to be too clever with the area. So if you were investing today, absolutely, your Manchesters, your Liverpool, your Leeds are really strong contenders. You could be a little bit braver and look at some other areas, but you don't need to. So there's no real point. Go for the best areas in those cities because this is long term for you. I think you'll be in a really solid place. And then if you repeat this every couple of years and say do this for the next 10 years, you'll find that that portfolio that you've built up in addition will bring in even more income. And then you could possibly look at selling one of the HMOs. And with the profits, you realize that, reinvest again. Now, at that point, you may have started to build, quite a sizable portfolio, and you may want to consolidate and have a look at just buying a few more prime assets. So the numbers of properties that you have are reduced. But what I would do is continue on the path you are right now, is get into something safe and solid, nothing too sexy, just keep it simple. It will be the most boring property in your portfolio, but boring is great from a management point of view.
Yeah.
Buy some boring buy-to-lets in great areas. And then after you've managed to build that portfolio up, possibly, I wouldn't go and get rid of both HMOs, but look at the one that gives you more hassle. Get rid of that one, reinvest that money, repeat the process again. And then after a few more years, look at that final HMO just as you're coming up to that point where you want to retire and say, okay, let's take that one out of the equation now. Let's reinvest that in some safer, more sensible stuff that's not going to take much of my time up. And you've done it. The great thing is here, if you just stay disciplined, don't get distracted by all the shiny objects that property can present to us, you will absolutely achieve what you want to achieve. What you need to do now is achieve it without your time being drained, which the HMOs, as you've experienced, are doing right now. But I wouldn't sell them yet. I'd hold on for them for a while because they are absolutely serving you a purpose.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. That's fantastic advice. Thanks, Rob.
We've spoken about this many times in the past, but boring is great. Christian's in a very enviable position where he's got a strong portfolio that's delivering great cash flow. So right now, there's no need for him to do anything risky or too clever. And this is another of the important things about setting goals and being clear about what it is you're trying to achieve. Christian could easily fall into the trap of just wanting more and more and more and more and ending up with a whole bunch of portfolios that are taking up all his time and being really stressful. But by being clear about what he wants and defining what the goal is, he's helped Rob give him some advice, which is you don't need to do any of that stuff. You can just keep on buying quality assets that will get you to where you need to be over the long term. And the great thing is he doesn't have to make a radical shift. There's no need to offload the HMOs he's got because he's managing them perfectly well and they're doing a job for him. But that doesn't mean that just because they've worked so far, you need to load up with more and more of them. He can just start buying more hands-off developments so no more of his time is taken up. Then when his cash flow is in a position to do so, he can sell those HMOs to win some of that time back. So Christian's in a great place, but we often hear from investors who are in a great place, but they don't realise it because they're always wanting more or they've achieved their goal and haven't even realised it. So getting that clarity is really, really important. So there we have it. Two very different investors with two very different situations. Maybe your own circumstances are similar to either Christian or Ruth, but if not, it doesn't matter. Hopefully what you picked up on was the thought process that was guiding the conversation that Rob was having with them both. It's a really great illustration of big picture thinking and being guided by a clear goal. We've talked about the importance of goal setting endlessly on this podcast, but I think those conversations really illustrate why. And we've also seen today the importance of revisiting your plan and checking progress against it, seeing if you're still on the right track. Often, of course, there are many different paths that you could take to get to where you need to be. But as a result of their conversation with Rob, both Ruth and Christian have clearer ideas of which direction they should be heading in.
So it's time for your success stories. You might be getting them to us via our social channels at Property Hub UK. You may be getting in touch via the Property Hub forum. Or you might be leaving us a 5-star review and telling us about all the progress and success that you've had as a property investor. We don't mind how you do it, but we do love that you do it. This week, a big thank you to a couple of hubbers who got in touch via Instagram. So Mark said, I've gone from telling you about my first buy-to-let in a podcast review 5 years ago to now getting my 10th buy-to-let that should complete in the next 2 weeks. I'm planning another, hopefully 3 or 4 this year, and it was the podcast that gave me the confidence to start. So a massive thanks from me. A massive well done to you, Mark. That is incredible. Like, the fact that you've taken action to that level and continue to take action as well. You've not given up when it's got hard is amazing. Well done to you. And next up is Holly. Holly was actually in a magazine, but she was also kind enough to get in touch via Instagram and said, the property podcast has changed my life, which sounds over the top, but it's true. Thank you for all the free resources. Well, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Holly. And thank you for taking action. And we're just so happy that it does make a difference and we can share some of your stories on the podcast.
All right, before we finish for this week, it's time for Hub Extra, that part of the show where we give you that little bit more to help you on your way. And today we've got something extra special that we've put together. No, we are not going to send Rob B round to your house to work with you one-on-one. We would love to do that, but there's just not enough Rob to go around. He can't work with everyone one-on-one, but having somebody to talk to one-on-one, having somebody to get that bit of advice from is so important. We needed to find a way of making this accessible to more people. So Rob, that's what we've done.
We have. You want to write this URL down now, propertyhub.net/goals. That's propertyhub.net/goals, or even go there, because you can book in with a property expert and talk about your property goals. As we've heard in this episode, it all starts with goals. Like, the goals are so important when it comes to being successful. And it's those people who've got those clear, defined goals that we really see to go on to be the successful property investors and achieve their dreams. It's the people who have half-hearted goals, unclear goals, or no goals at all that really struggle. So what we've created is a free service, no charge, no catch. You can go to this link, book in a call with one of our team, and they will help you craft really good goals. They will question goals that you've got already. It's not just a well-done service. They're going to look at what you've got in mind. They're going to challenge you on them, and you'll leave that call being a lot clearer on what you should be doing next. So that sort of, oh gosh, there's so many options, I don't know what to do. Well, here's step 1. It's get your goals clearly defined. We've got courses on this subject. We've got podcasts on this subject, but we've just gone one better, giving the opportunity to get one-on-one advice personalised just to you. So we love bringing you value in Hub Extra, and we really hope you agree we've done pretty well this week. We're just going to offer a free service. So take advantage of it. propertyhub.net/goals. Go there now, book in a time. There may be a little bit of a wait because obviously lots of people will be booking in, but the sooner you do it, the sooner you'll get your call. So go there now and start making progress. Good luck.
Well, another property podcast done, and what a cracker it has been. Hopefully hearing the process that Rob took our investors through has given you lots of ideas. And if you're not clear on your goals, you've now got no excuse, because you can go to propertyhub.net/goals and work with one of our team to get on the right track. Not a bad 20 minutes or so. Well, we'll be back to do it again next week. And of course, we'll be back in the meantime with Ask Rob and Rob on Tuesday. So we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.